There's another factor or two involved in this in Las Vegas. Legally, Nevada did not have segregated schools. Segregation had been declared unconstitutional in Nevada in 1872. We know about Brown v. Board of Education in '54. What Nevada had was segregated housing. So West Las Vegas was a predominantly African American community. East of the railroad tracks, predominantly white. And so there is no school integration going on. The NAACP is beginning efforts in this regard under the leadership of Charles Keller, who was both an attorney and the head of the local chapter. You have high schools that serve neighborhoods, but of course they're coming in from beyond the immediate surrounding area, as opposed to, say, elementary schools, junior high schools. So that this is really the first time that there are a lot of kids, white kids, black kids, being exposed to other races.
My sister and I were walking to J.D. Smith. We were in middle school. Back then they called it junior high school, now it's middle school. And I remember we're walking past Jerry's Nugget on Tonopah. And I must have been probably 12, 13. She must have been about 12. And these two cute little kids come out. They're white kids. And we said good morning. And they said, hey, niggers.
I was in junior high. I didn't have them in elementary school. There were none. I was in all white at Halley-Hewison. J.D. Smith, there were a lot of blacks.
The late 60s is when I started high school, and Rancho High School wasn't very far. In fact, I walked to school. It was under the 2-mile range for getting to school, and so there was no bus service at first, so a lot of us just walked or got rides, and it was a different school. We had, it was a school that wasn't very wealthy. We had a lot of Hispanic kids. We had a lot of Caucasian kids that weren't very well off, and then the blacks weren't very well off either.
And I can recall myself when I came here in 1966 and 67, I could never find a residence or any place to rent an apartment anywhere in the southern part of the valley. I mean, going south towards the Strip.
I grew up in North Las Vegas. It was nicknamed the Dixie of the West. In the late 60s, I saw a transition as us children started to be more involved in racially mixed schools, you know.
I grew up on the West Side community. We didn't have to leave our community for anything. We shopped there, we got our groceries, we got our haircuts, our stores. We didn't have to leave for anything. So when after the Civil Rights Act, and we were able to go other places, then we started having the conflicts.
Did you ever face any racial tensions at Jim Bridger?
Yes. The black people, the black guys, they wanted your lunch money.
But, you know, we weren't allowed to go on the Strip. In fact, when I was really young, my grandmother boarded entertainers, both that performed out on the Strip and also in the black downtown area. We had our own downtown area with our own hotels, and you know, black entertainers, you know, it was separate. And whenever you left the black side of town, you were confronted by the police. It was like they had a net around the community.
I went to segregated schools. Las Vegas was made segregated schools, okay? I didn't go to school in integrated school system, integrated until I went to 7th grade junior high school. So that was a big culture shock for me because we never had gone to school with white kids, and then all of a sudden here we get on a bus and get bused to a school, you know, on the other side of town.
Growing up, my mother always instilled in me that color never made an issue, was not an issue. She always told me that if I cut you and I cut someone else, that you'll all bleed red. Okay, so that's the way I was raised. But as I grew up and I got into junior high school, my very first day at Jim Bridger, they had us out on the athletic field. And the coach just said, okay, you be a captain and you pick who you want to be on your side. Somebody else picked the people who you want on his side. And so I picked the teammates that I wanted, and there was one guy left. And I said, okay, well, I'll just take him. He stated that he didn't want to play with me. So that was my really first experience being at Jim Bridger. I'd never experienced that. When I went to the coach, I went with a teacher at Jim Bridger and spoke to him about it. It was like, okay, so why are you upset? That instilled in me that something's just not right. You know, I'm being treated differently. If I had done that, then I felt like the punishment at least would have been to go to the principal's office and talk about something that you're not supposed to do. It instilled in me not a hatred. I would say I hated it, but it instilled in me a lot of animosity towards what was going on.
No, I mean, nigger was a commonplace word in our lifestyle. My grandparents were from the South, my uncles, you know, a lot of the neighbors, you know, and unfortunately that was just the way it was.
I don't know. I still don't like using those words.
Because my friends in the community were white. A lot of times I was with them. We'd hang out at Skaggs and hang out at the, you know, A&W. So it came with the pressure also for them. The pressure of, why are you with her? She's a nigger, you know, and vice versa.
The blacks, well, I got used to them when I was in junior high.
I was the only black kid, you know, going out for the team, and I grew up with baseball. And I just remember they were hitting, you know, infielders, you know, some balls, and I went for a hop, and the ball just, you know, it made a bad hop and hit me in the lip. And these two white kids are behind the backstop, and they look and they start laughing, and ha ha ha, hit the GD nigger in the lip.
And I was also told many years later by my own father that he gave a Caucasian co-worker a ride home and was promptly pulled over and told that in no uncertain terms, this is not something that's acceptable in this part of town.
By the time you get into the late 60s, you have the lower class and lower middle class of the African American community who's saying, great, we have the right now to go to a strip hotel and gamble, except we can't afford to gamble. We have the right to go sit in a showroom, except we can't afford to go sit in the showroom. We want better jobs. We want help for West Las Vegas. They're not getting it.
There was a lot of people were bussed in, blacks were bussed in, but the white kids were from Northtown. And Northtown had a stigma about it where we didn't have the class like Valley, who had the rich kids, and Gorman and...
First of all, yes, to answer your question, we were the first black family to move out of our community, the African American community, on Owens, right across from Rancho High School. So there was tension even within our neighbors. Again, it was change for everybody. It was a change for us, being used to having people in our community that we all look alike in some kind of way, color-wise, and then being moved into a community that was really, they weren't that receptive to us.
There was a lot of bitterness, there's a lot of resentment because I grew up in an era where busing became a factor. And, you know, I went to junior high school so far away that, you know, it took us 45 minutes to get to school every morning. You know, so, you know, there was resentment of us having to go out there by our side, and then the fact that we were there. And I always tell people, my 1 year on that side of town, I think I was swatted by everybody that had the authority to swat. And, you know, running in the hallway, you know, cutting in line, you know, throwing spit wads at your friends and stuff, just stuff that, you know, kids do. And we were always sent to the office and given swats. And I remember when my grandmother took me back to school the next year to to sign me up for school. They say you can't go to school here. You know, it says, you know, you're in a different zone, is what they said.
You know, late 60s, early 70s. There, you know, back in the day, it was the black glove, the black socks, you know, and you know, we had our black players, and we kind of segregated ourselves away from a lot of the white players, but they were still our teammates.
The word nigger really wasn't, in my opinion, a racial term. It's just what a black person was.
When did you know that that word was offensive?
Sadly, probably not till the 7th or 8th grade, you know, before somebody corrected us, you know, and said, you know, we didn't use it at school, but I remember one time, and it was kind of in a funny way that it happened. We were doing geography, and we were identifying African countries, and Nigeria was a country, and the student called it Nigeria, and the teacher said, I think it was probably the 7th grade, and he said, no, that's wrong, and you can't use that word. Being an athlete from the 7th grade, a lot of my teammates were black, and you know, especially when I got to my sophomore year, we had, I couldn't even tell you the percentage of black and white on that junior varsity team I believe you were part of. Good mix of guys. There wasn't a black kid on that team that I felt any different about than any white kid on that team.
If you ever went to College Park Bowling Lanes, if you ever went to Skaggs, if you ever passed a Mormon church that's in North Las Vegas off of West Lake Mead, you're going to hear that N-word much more than you care to. So it was a conditioning process, I believe, that brought about a certain state of consciousness that you kept your guard up so that you didn't get sucker punched, if that might be the correct term.
The blacks saw the Mormons as, gosh, they don't like us. You know,
I was told that.
Being on the wrong side of town. And, you know, we were used to dealing with, you know, with the racism and the discrimination, and the police, you know, were always there.